Well, hello everybody, and welcome again to one of my live videos here on YouTube. Now I'm still working on this lovely robin, as you can see, but I've not done anything else since the last time around, since I last went live. So I'm going to start working on, get a piece of paper, all the fine details for the feathers. I'm going to start around the head and gradually build my way down. I'm going to change my glasses in a minute. Got the wrong glasses on, I don't know. Right, here we go. Now what I tend to do when I'm working on something like this, I like to look at the direction the feathers grow and maintain that direction all the time. So I keep checking back and forth on that reference photograph all the time. This one I'm just doing here with some raw umber. There you go, you can see it now. A little bit of raw umber. I also like to work in layers. Now there's a quicker way of doing this. And I'll show you that very shortly. I know. Not that you should ever rush a painting, you know that. Never rush a painting. So a little bit of raw umber to begin with. Do note, to the left hand side of the eye, all this area here is grey, isn't it? It's grey right at the very top as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ease away from that area, also checking the angle. I'm obviously putting these brush strokes in. So it's going more towards between 8 and 9 o'clock direction, the way I tend to look at it. That's just to begin with. Size 00 brush, by the way. This is a Winsor & Newton Cotsman, Series 111. There's a link in the description down below if you're interested. Let's have a quick look at the grey. Now, I've got a variety of colours here from last time around, as you can see here. So, if I check my greys, I'm trying to think of the colours that we've got here. We've got French Ultramarine and Payne's, no, what was it? Purple Lake, that's right, French Ultramarine and Purple Lake. Had to think then, that's that one there. And this one, yeah, Lemon Yellow and so on. I'll just go for that one. I've made notes of the colour names as well along the way. I'm going to wet that down, which is really watery. Get some scrap watercolour paper. Give that a test. I like to test out before I go to the painting to make sure it's not too strong, and also to compare the colours as well. That'll do. It's pretty watery in there, and that will do normally for the front of the head. Any grey areas, a bit more water. There you go. Any grey areas we can see in the top of the head. I'm not too worried as well about kind of covering up areas which are quite white, because I do like to use white paint later on. I do. Anybody that follows my video lessons will know that anyway. So right to the top of the head, and a little bit of grey in there. This will get softened down as well. Then to the left hand side of the eye, flicking up. So always flicking up. Run out of paint, get a little bit more. Yes, you can use a bigger brush as long as you've got a decent sized tip on it. I know. I've got some good brushes like that. But I do like my size 00s, I really do. Then bringing that down to about here. Overlapping these lines as I'm doing this. Okay, now we're getting to a larger area. I like to soften that first of all up, without clean brush. What I'm going to do, I'm going to switch to my special brush. Don't laugh, if you're not seeing this, don't laugh. This is my replicator, the replicator. And all I've done, I've got to grab a pair of pliers, which I'm going to show you now, 1 second. Like that. Crimp the end. This is an old brush though, destined for the bin. Remember that. And I do have a video on that as well. And I've basically flattened it and pulled it out like that. Squeezed it again, pulled it out the other side like that. And what I end up with then is like a fan-shaped brush like so. So what I can do, what colour shall we use this time around? I don't know really. Just going to check my colours in a minute. I've got a colour list here all written down like that though. So I'm going to go for yellow ochre, which is this one here. Otherwise I would have forgotten from last time I did this. It's a little bit of water in there. And what this will do, give it a tap or two on some kitchen roll. This will create multiple lines in one go. See that? Only just visible, I know. So multiple lines like that. Clever, isn't it? Really, something like that. So that's what I'm going to do for all the detail, the initial layer of detail. And remember, with watercolours, we like to kind of build up the layers step by step, starting off with the lightest colour first of all, kind of watery washes, watery layers of detail. Then we'll go to more of a sort of, I don't know, think of watery, milky, creamy and thick, okay, on the paint consistencies. And they're the sort of layers I tend to work to when I'm doing something like this. And you can see how swift you can do this without rushing the painting, of course. Overlapping the lines as I do so. The only problem with something like this is that you find the lines are too parallel. They don't overlap enough. So it's like a pair of train lines going side by side all the time. And one thing we don't want is our robin look as if it's been combed. Not really, I know. Then down the side there. So if you do have an old brush knocking about, we're in your painting gear, go for some raw umber, then what I suggest you do what I'm doing here. Have a play with it. Doesn't always work out, bear that in mind. It's always worth buying some of those cheap ones. You know when you get them from somewhere like the pound shop or the thrift shop or something like that. They're really useful. Well, see what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a little bit of colour and just reinforce these pencil marks before I start covering up with detail. Otherwise these will just simply disappear. Very lightly. Very lightly. Now these YouTube live videos, I won't just be painting something like an animal, a bird or whatever it might be. Let me know what you think you'd like to see me paint on here. Anything that's not going to take too long on camera, obviously. So think about that. If you've got any ideas, pop it in the comments for me, will you? Because I'd be interested to find out. And if there's something I can do for you, I'll certainly have a go. I'll consider, which I will. I'll certainly consider it. Okay, just down the side there. Now, when you look at reference photographs, you can see this one on the screen here, is that they do vary, you know, because it depends on the light of the day when the photograph was taken. It really does. And sometimes you find that, I'll get some brown in a minute. Sometimes you find that depending on the light, the colours will vary for that animal, bird, whatever it might be. For example, think about it this way. If you've got a pet dog or cat or something like that, and that pet, I'm going to turn my body around, you find that you take the photograph indoors underneath, I don't know, strip lighting or something like that, you find that the colour's not quite right, are they? Yes, you also get a glow in the eye, like the flash colour in the eye, but the colours aren't right. So trying to take a photograph in natural daylight is important. And that applies when you're taking photographs of wildlife as well. Natural daylight normally it will be anyway, but it will also vary if it's a really bright day or an overcast day. And the colours can vary for that. And also the colours vary depending on the time of the year as well, don't they? You know, with plumage and so on. Breeding season, they show off their best colours. I tried that once, it didn't work for me. No. Just going to very lightly go over these lines now. Very lightly. Just to make sure I reinforce those pencil marks. Otherwise I have to redraw them again. I know. The good thing about this area here, you know, don't tell anybody though, keep it to yourself, is that when you're painting all these fine lines for the wing, if you've missed one or two, it doesn't really matter. Who's counting, eh? Don't tell me you are. No, I hope not. So it doesn't matter if you make them up as you go along. As long as you get the angle right, and the sort of sizes as well like I'm doing here. This will allow me to have this stand out a little bit more and add further details over the top. And I'll keep reinforcing these lines as I go along as well, just so I don't lose where they are. They got this one down below, like so. So even just by putting just a light layer of detail on, it's starting to come together a little bit more, isn't it? And that's what I like about something like this. When you're working on wildlife, and you're working on feathers or fur, and you start to see it come together, because you're thinking about the shape all the time, you're thinking about the angles, you're thinking about the curve of those lines, thinking about the length of the lines, the thickness of the lines, it goes on and on and on. But once you've got all this in your head, which I try to get every day when I'm painting anyway, then you can make it come together, you really can. Because it's these lines that will create the shape, as well as the initial washes we've already put on there as well. And that's the beauty about working with watercolour and trying to get something to paint, something more realistic, like this robin. It's not there yet, I know, it's too cartoony at the moment. But with numerous layers of paint over the top, that will soon come together. Now then, I'm going to ignore this one for the orange chest. It's like a yellowy, orangey sort of chest. It's supposed to be a red chest, isn't it? They call it the red-breasted robin, don't they? But it's not really red, is it? No, it's like a yellow-orangey with a hint of red inside there. Yeah, that's the way I see it anyway. Let's go for some orange. And that's cadmium orange and scarlet lake. What I'm going to do is make a start on working out where things go first of all. So just around here, it's going to be really bright to begin with, but this one needs to be dulling down over time. Can't really see that, can you? I can. Well, there we go. Start to add this colour in, just within those areas. Looking at the direction of those feathers again, and looking at the length of those lines again. Something I tend to hark on about quite a lot to my members on Patreon. They'll tell you that, Paul always goes on about it, he really does. So keep checking those angles and look around, see what you can see. Just going to just add a few more down there as well. Because on the photograph, they're not that bright, are they? Somebody said that about me once, I know, not very nice. And then they start getting a little bit longer as they start to work out to the side there. Do note, we haven't got like a solid edge like I've got here on the photograph, have we? So that needs to be faded out. So I'll show you how to soften that back in a bit. And because we're using a little bit of white paint in there as well, or I will be, depends if you want me to show you this one again on camera, might be something different next time, then we can hide that line with white paint as well, to a certain degree, with opaque white. But that would really make it come together as well. Okay, just looking at where this goes. Notice the way that I'm actually looking at the angles these are going at. So I've got a little fly here. Get away, fly. And also, they're sort of curving around that way, but also overlapping as well. Crisscrossing all the time. So what you're looking at when I say crisscrossing, what's my bit of paper there? Look? When you're working on feathers or fur, don't just do it like that, so they're all symmetrical, all sort of parallel with one another. What you need to do is overlap those lines, like this. Constantly overlap them like that. And that's what I'm doing with the orange. I better change my colour again now, hadn't I? I know. Back to the orange. And then continue working your way down that chest there. Taking your time. There's no rush. Never, ever, ever, ever. Who said that? Rush your painting. Okay, let's get a little bit more down there. I'm going to get shorter lines down here now. You can see how watery this mixture is at the moment. Very, very watery. People say, why do you always use a size 00, Paul? Well, not always. As you know, I've got other brushes as well. I just like the control over it. And depending on how you hold that brush, if you're holding it further away, that's a looser style, isn't it? If you're holding it closer down, it's a tighter style. So you get those really, really tight lines and marks onto that paper doing it that way around. So it also depends on how you hold that brush, not just how you mix the paints as well, because that's obviously very important, the consistency of those paints. Okay, 1 second, get my bit of paper out of the way. Just protects the watercolour surface, obviously. Then continue down. Look at these angles. Now my eyes are going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth to that reference photograph every few seconds. And I mean literally every few seconds. Got a bit of a short-term memory, so because of that, it does help me kind of sink into my mind a little bit more when I'm painting details. I've been painting that way for well over 40 years now. You wouldn't think it sometimes. Okay, and that sort of branches off in towards the sort of white area there on the chest, doesn't it? So that's the first layer on with our brightest of colours. We have got this one as well, is slightly richer, cadmium orange and alizarin crimson. So give it a tap or two. They can use a little bit of that as well in places. Extra brightness. Do we really need it? Not really, no, but you know, it's a painting. And we can use our little bit of artistic license if we want to. So add a tiny amount of this in places. Don't completely cover it though. A little bit more down there. Okay. And then what we've got then for after that, a little bit more down this. I'm just looking at the angle down here as it aims towards the chest. And a tiny amount there as well. Just 1 second. Well, probably about 32 seconds, roughly like that. Right, there you go. That's what's coming up this year. I know, all that before Christmas this year for my members on Patreon. Well, there you go. Right, a little bit more down there. Now I want to soften that edge down. Now there's more than one way of doing that. There really is. What you can do, get a decent brush and wear the tip away. Or you can get an old brush. I've got one here, which I've also squeezed with a pair of pliers. See that? And shaped it with a craft knife. But it works. So I'm going to wet that, get some nearly clean kitchen roll, and use that to very lightly stipple and tap that edge. And straight away, the hard edge has now disappeared, hasn't it? We've also got a hard edge going down here. Now, it's not too bad like that, but again, I don't want it too defined. Because when we paint the chest feathers as well, what I'll do, I'll sort of branch them across there as well at the same time, you know. Okay, a little more down there. What I'll concentrate on now, because we haven't got too long today, we'll be on as long as we need to be on today. I'm going to concentrate on this lovely orange area here and try to make that a little bit more shapely and less bright really. So what I can do, get a larger brush, take the water off, so clean damp brush, and just lightly soften this down a touch. These colours really do blend very, very well indeed. They really do. So cadmium orange, scarlet lake, a little bit of lemon yellow behind the scenes. Just to lightly knock them back. And also they lift nicely as well. And that's what I do like about these colours. Because they do like to lift. It just means if you've got to take paint off the paper to create extra detail, not just because you made a mistake or something like that, then you can do. Now then, colour-wise, I need an orange. It's going to be a little bit duller than the other ones. So what I'm going to do is get a little bit of brown, and I think I might go for, here's my colours again, a tiny amount of burnt umber, but not much. So burnt umber. Try that in, go for that one. A little bit there first of all, not too much though. Maybe a touch more. About there. Okay, clean your brush out. We'll go for that. Let's give that one a try, shall we? It's still fairly watery though. Don't want to go too thick just yet. The reason why, if you go too thick on the consistency and you make mistakes, it's difficult to kind of fix them because you've got, you know, like a deep paint on the paper, a very thick paint on the paper. Which is why we tend to work from light to dark really. But also the other reason from light to dark is because we like to build up in layers. And the way I tend to do fur and feathers on a regular basis is working in layers. It gives you that sort of deep feel to the feathers or fur. So that's why, another reason why I tend to work in many layers, starting from the kind of watery washes first of all, and light details and then gradually get darker as I go along. So this is where you can start to shape it a little bit more as well. Just a touch more. Just here and there. Just with this sort of watery wash here, I'm going to thicken this down shortly. And this, by doing this, it also gives you an idea where things go. I've noticed, yeah, I have, honestly, around the eye, we've got a bit of a white area coming around there. So what we can do, we can try lifting paint off, or, as I mentioned, I will be adding white paint around some of the areas, but that's not really white, is it? Probably around this side a touch, but the rest is sort of a very dull orange, really, very, very dull. So it's looking carefully at those sort of colours you can see there. And sometimes, if you've got your photograph on a tablet, as I have here, you can zoom into that photograph and just look really deep into the kind of pixels on the photo for those colours. And I've done that many times. You think, oh, that's the colour I need then. Oh yeah. Okay, a few more down there. Branch it out over our blended area now. So these are sort of the mid-tones in a way. Nearly mid-tones. It's getting there. And because a painting may take, I don't know, 5 hours to do something like this, I don't know, it's hard to say, isn't it? Depends on the painting, depends on the subject, depends if you put a background on. As long as you take your time with it, as I keep saying, that's all that matters really. Okay, so now we've got darker area going down there. We'll add some of this down here as well. And I'm going to thicken this paint down. I don't mean thicken it. With capital T. A few more down there. Down here. Okay, and once again looking at those angles. They're all sorts of clumps down here a little bit as well. So they're sort of overlaying. As you can see here. That comes up there. Bit of a line there. And it comes down the side as well. Gradually building it up. If we take all that colour away, we can always add more colour over the top. Okay, touch more around there. Right, time to get creamy, I think, looking at this now. My old mixing brush, a very old brush for doing that with. As mentioned, don't use your decent brushes for that. Even though my decent brushes are usually cheap brushes. Sorry, inexpensive brushes. We don't go cheap, do we? No, we do. That one there, Scarlet Lake and Cadmium Orange. So I'll go for that one first of all. So these are my half pans. And I want these, as I mentioned, to a creamy consistency. Do note, don't do this over your painting like I'm doing. It's only because I'm doing this on camera, so you can see what I'm doing, okay? Because if it splashes on your painting, you'll be going, no, not on that background. Yes, I've done that many times through my videos. I really have. But I tend to hide that on Patreon. Don't tell my members that, whatever you do. So that's more of a sort of creamy colour cadmium orange in there now. Or creamy consistency, should I say, not colour. A little bit of Scarlet Lake. Oh, look at that. Lovely, lovely colour. Now I need to dullien that down a little bit as well. Now we could use burnt sienna, which I've already got within our palette, or we could use, as I mentioned, burnt umber. So I'm going to try the burnt umber first of all, just in one corner, and see what that looks like on some scrap paper a minute. Always test. Now I'm not happy with that, I'm really not happy with that. I might try, get some of the orange, a little bit of, I don't know, let's go for the French ultramarine. This is to dullien it down, as I mentioned. Too much, as you can see. So I'm going to keep going until I get the colour that I want. And that, ooh, that's nearly there. That's nearly there. And I'll put some more back in there, I realise. French ultramarine again. Just trying to get that right. And I do this a lot with my paintings. Trying to work out the colour. Do this before you go to your painting. Because if you get the wrong colour on there, then it's difficult to sort of, fix afterwards, isn't it? Especially if it's a staining colour as well. I need to make some more of this up off camera, won't I? There's not a lot there, is there? Okay, get some of that lovely French ultramarine in there. I'm just about to run out of colour already. Oh dear. I don't know. And then start to build up those details. Believe it or not, that'll go a long way. Start to build them up. Look where they go. Let me get some more in there a minute. Okay. That's a little bit of Payne's grey this time. Cadmium orange. Scarlet Lake. That's better. So all trial and error when you're working with colours. That's a richer colour, that. That'll do. You're looking for those sort of mid-tone to dark tone shades now. We start to form the shapes that you're looking for. So this sort of eye ring around there, the white ring going around, you can add that in. And then probably a touch more down below as well. And maybe a tiny amount up there as well. Working out where things go, and you can always blend this as well afterwards, can't you? If you find it's too harsh, like that line there, you can soften it back. You can work out where it goes and then soften it back. Remember, don't go too dark too soon when you're doing anything like this. Okay, a few more down there. Looking towards the top of the eye. Gradually building the details within there. I don't want to put too much in there, so it's going to darken it down too much, isn't it? Let's get some of our orange colour. Mix that in with it. Go back and forth between those colours. Play with them. And let those colours work for you. That's better. Okay. Touch more around there. And I can start to introduce some details along this side now. Just a few, it's not very dark around there, is it? Because the thing is, with something so orange, you've got to think about the shape. How are you going to create shape with something so bright? Tricky, isn't it? And that's all done through very careful observation of that photograph and looking at where the slightly darker tones are. And switching between colours as you do so. So it's slightly darker down the front of this chest here. And then towards the side. I'm going to get a little bit more cadmium orange in that one. Then lightly soften this one down here now. That's better, it's looking more like it now there. So now we've all got numerous layers on there, haven't we? So we've got plenty of layers going on around this section. And once this is lightly softened, just be a few tweaks here and there, and then what I'm going to do is do some lifting off process with it as well. Just create extra details within this chest. Especially around here, it's too dark there. Don't like that. Nah, don't like that. But I can change that as much as I want to. Because remember what I said about these colours? They do lift really, really well. And using negative painting technique, like lifting paint off to create detail, is a good way of doing it as well. And I do that very often when I'm working with both feathers and, of course, fur. Now I did say I might lift off a little bit of paint around the eye. Should we give that a try? Yeah, go on then. Let's try it. Damp, clean brush. Take most of that water off. Not all of it, but most of it. And if you go over the same area time and time again, like so, get a clean piece of kitchen roll and dab. That's just lighten that one section of refraction there, isn't it? If it doesn't lighten it enough, then I will use white later on, just to highlight it a touch more. This side, keep going over the place, same place, time and time again, following that same curve. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. It's like having a breathalyzer, isn't it? Apparently. Never been there, I don't know. And then the same along the top. So now we've already created that light area around the eye, haven't we, by doing so. And also, I did say that around this area here, I think it might be a bit too dark, or even this area here. So again, the same thing applies. Take most of that water off, but not all of it, Try down here now. and take off some tiny areas and lift. And you can see all I've done, lifted those little sections there on this kitchen roll. That's it. And that's the way that I would think about painting fur like that. Now, remember what I said earlier on, if there's any ideas that you want me to paint, or try to paint on, well, on live anyway, something that's not too long or laborious, let me know. Wildlife orientated preferably, okay? Like painting a particular eye of an animal, or, I don't know, a nose, a beak. A nose? That's a human. Would we be called animals? I suppose we would be, wouldn't we? So all that needs now is gentle blending, and that'll be that chest more or less done, other than some lifting off work. And maybe a few fine touches with some colour as well.